Hello, what's good, people? Just want to talk very quickly about an interesting parallel in the Gospels with Vespasian's life again. This is his father this time, but the two are really seen together in many regards, father and son, both gods, and so on. So it is likely that this made it into the Gospel of Mark and then was copied in Luke and Matthew. There are two healing miracles that Jesus was supposed to have done, but they are actually Vespasian's healing miracles. And if Mark is written post 69, which is when this thing is supposed to have happened, then it's quite logical that Mark would have copied Vespasian's healing miracles. There are two, and they're quite specific, so we're just going to go through them here. And this is nothing to do with the other chronological parallels between Titus the son, and Jesus in the Gospel of Luke, mirrored in Mark. But Mark has about 25 parallels. Luke is 32, and they're basically chronological, so you can see the problem. This is a layer of within the later Christian tradition, written most likely in the 2nd century, that just incorporates the story of Titus. I'm sorry, it's quite obvious. Now, so yes, the title of this is called Miraculous Parallels, Vespasian's Healings and the Gospel Tradition. Abstract. This essay, it's a small essay, examines the striking narrative parallels between the miraculous healings attributed to the Roman Emperor Vespasian and those performed by Jesus in the canonical Gospels. Through textual analysis and Bayesian probability, it investigates whether these similarities are likely coincidental or suggest literary or propagandistic borrowing, particularly in light of chronological context and narrative function. Introduction. Two highly specific miracles are shared between the accounts of Vespasian and Jesus. They are: 1, the healing of a man with a withered or crippled hand, and 2, the healing of a blind man using spittle. Okay, this study assesses whether these similarities in these two miracle accounts indicate dependency, i.e. literary borrowing or influence, or whether they can be plausibly explained as coincidence or shared cultural motif. Two primary sources. So these are the sources. Vespasian, for this miracle, Tacitus Histories 481. This is written around 105 CE. With Vespasian there happened a wonderful event. A man of the common people of Alexandria, well known for his blindness. This is not paraphrased, this is just condensed, okay? Imploring him to moisten his cheeks and eyes with his spittle, another man who was lame in his hand begged the emperor to touch his hand with his foot. The hand immediately recovered its function, and the blind man saw again. Okay, Suetonius, the 12 Caesars, Vespasian 7:2, written around 121 CE. A man who had lost the use of his hand and another who was blind approached Vespasian at Alexandria on the advice of Seraphis. So Seraphis and Jesus are quite closely related gods, and Seraphis was created by the Greco-Romans, Ptolemy. Okay. It was a creation of Ptolemy, just like Jesus was probably somewhat a creation of Vespasian. The first asked him to touch his hand with his heel. The second asked him to anoint his eyes with spittle. The cures were successful. End quote. These accounts attribute divine healing power to the Roman emperor at a crucial political moment in 69 as part of his rise to power. Okay, gospel parallels. Healing of the withered hand in Mark 3:16. He said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched his hand out, and his hand was restored. Also in Matthew and Luke 12:9-4, and Luke 6:11. Healing of blindness with spittle. He had spit. So this is the Mark quote. He had spit on his eyes and laid his hands on them, and his sight was restored. John also has this, adds a variation. Jesus makes mud with spittle and anoints the man's eyes. Notable absence: there is no gospel account in which Jesus uses his foot to heal. So this is in Vespasian, but it's not in that, just to be clear. However, many fall at Jesus' feet in reverence. Tenuous there maybe, but we can see the obviousness of the shared miracles here in the way that they're conducted. Chronological considerations: Vespasian's miracle occurred in 69 during his campaign in Alexandria. They were likely propagated publicly soon afterwards to secure his legitimacy. Tacitus, writing 105, and Suetonius 121 record these events later. Gospel of Mark, now this is quite interesting, dated of course to 65-70 in a mainstream but this is an old dating now, but many scholars favour 70 to 80 or even 80, but even later, and I favour later, decades later. If written around 70, it is plausible that the gospel authors had heard of Vespasian's miracles. So even if written around 70, what is important here as well is a later tradition recorded by Eusebius claims that Mark himself founded a church in Alexandria. While this is likely a later ecclesiastical invention, okay, it does suggest, I mean, if we go with Christian's logic here, not me, because my name is Christian, by the way, then it's even more likely that there might be a narrative borrowing going on here. So yeah, you know, the fact that Mark might have established a church in Alexandria would help this argument, because it's here that Vespasian does this miracle. Is Mark listening to people talking about Vespasian and just copying it? Who knows? Okay, the Bayesian hypothesis now. So I did a Bayesian, interesting, like I just throw out the question, what do you think on an honest and conservative, probabilities conservative, 0.5, moderately plausible that Mark was aware of Vespasian's story? Right, it's a 50-50 chance, right? Because he's an emperor and this information gets around. Okay, Titus and Suetonius both recount it. So the Bayesian theorem here is at 0.988, so 98.9 probability that the gospel miracle stories were influenced by or deliberately mirrored Vespasian's miracle if Mark was written post 70, which it most abundantly was. So I actually think that might be a little too high even there, but I just want to say this is what ChatGPT, the unbiased computer, would think if he, you know, people have biases, computers really don't. I know the inputs are important, but I told it to put in conservative inputs, so it's basically 50-50. If Mark, being literate, might have heard of Vespasian's story, which if he goes to Alexandria, we can assume that if it was a miracle, or two of them, that he might have heard of it. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, the conclusion, when assessed through both historical and probabilistic lenses, the parallels between Vespasian's and Jesus' miracles are unlikely to be coincidental. If the Gospel of Mark postdates the public circulation of Vespasian's miracle propaganda, it is highly probable that the Gospel author intentionally echoed or inverted those imperial claims. This insight adds new depth to our understanding of how early Christian texts may have engaged with and subtly subverted Roman political narratives. You see, this is the way that, that's the way ChatGPT will see this, but I see this as Vespasian comes along and does these things, and then covertly these are put into, or not so covertly, they're put into the gospel stories. It's really that simple. I also wanted to quickly, as a little addendum, and I might have covered this before, but I'm going to do it again. So we have quite a few in Suetonius again, and Tacitus and Josephus. So the same characters, we see the earliest attestations for Jesus in, which are not really attestations. We actually see as exampled here, Jewish Wars 654. And I'm just going to read the highlighted parts of this so you can find this. Now, this oracle, he was talking about the Jews took this prediction to belong to themselves in particular, and many of the wise men were thereby deceived in their determination. So he's talking about, and now this oracle certainly denoted the government of Vespasian, who was appointed emperor in Judea. I should have given some context there. So this is talking about the Jews to start this war. Sorry, what did the most, I apologize. What this basically says is, if you go to Tacitus' Histories, book 513, Suetonius Vespasian 4:5, and also Cassius Dio has the same account. So there are 4 historians here, basically saying that the Jews had this notion here. It was this is Cassius Dio. For an ancient and established belief had spread throughout the East that at this time, the coming of the end of Jerusalem, right? Men coming from Judea would rule the world. The Jews took this to mean themselves, but in the end they were deceived, for it was the rulers from Judea who became Roman emperors, right? So the Roman empires here are Tacitus. I'll just read Suetonius's again because it condenses what I mean here. An ancient and persistent belief was current throughout the East, that it was fated at that time for men coming from Judea to rule the world. This prediction, as it later turned out, referred to the Roman emperor, but the people of Judea took it to themselves and rebelled. So they're talking about these Jews had this notion here that someone would come from Judea to rule the world, the Messiah. This is a messianic claim, and Tacitus and Josephus make it even more clear. I'll leave you guys though to have a look at this if you wish. And this is why people like Origen, when he says that Josephus did not believe that Jesus was the Messiah, he's probably looked at this and realized that Josephus thought Titus was the Messiah, which makes complete sense, as obviously Titus toppled the Jerusalem temple. This prediction is in Luke and other Gospels about the Son of Man coming in clouds, and Josephus says that Titus's men were seen running around the clouds, and Titus came in the clouds to destroy Jerusalem. He is the Son of Man, Titus. It's right here. This is one little node of this. So we have this messianic claim and the Davidic rulers. Of course, the Davidic Messiah was supposed to come for the Jews. He never did, but he did in the form of this Roman emperor. All right, the Jews never accepted this, obviously, but that is what is actually retained in the Gospels. So I'm going to leave that there for you. Josephus, Jewish Wars 654. If you want to read just one of these accounts, there are 4 of them. I have them in my book. We just have a few more interesting little data points there to consider when we want to disagree that Titus wasn't in part related to this story of Jesus in the Gospels. The Romans were crude people. They were these emperors were high-functioning psychopaths. They were very rude and crude people, but they also liked to have a joke. And what kind of joke might that have been if they could have got Jews, many converts from Judaism into Christianity, to worship the Caesar, someone they evidently despised? Think about it that way. For 2,000 years, they maintained that mental control. It's time to end that and think about elevating our understanding of what Christ means. Okay, see you later. Cheers. Bye bye.